Hey, welcome to Tech Talk Unfiltered. This is Eric from New Vista Community Services.
And this
And
is
with us,
Vedo,
we have
also
Vedo.
of a New Vista Community Services, except I'm over in Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm at the home base down here on the peninsula. Hey, so how's things going?
They're going great. I was actually in Santa Cruz today, so it's pretty cool. What a wonderful day to be out there, I tell you.
Oh, it's been beautiful. We almost went down to Monterey this weekend and go watch the racers, the auto clubs down at Laguna Seca.
Oh, I love that.
But my daughter woke up too late, so we went to Tiburon. And
Oh,
if you've never been to Tiburon,
I
it
have.
is this quaint, very cute little downtown area
Yeah, and
that's
it's right on the
right on the
water.
water. Yeah, it's
Yep.
right on the water. It's beautiful. And we went on Saturday, and the weather was great. It wasn't too hot. It was sunny. It was just a slight breeze. Picturesque. It was
Yes.
beautiful. So if you want to do a day trip, Tiburon is highly recommended. Good food, good restaurants.
You can even dock your boat there and go to a restaurant. It's really
You
nice.
can, you can, or you can go to the city and catch a ferry over. It's
Yep.
great. So yeah, no, it's this is why we live in the Bay Area. It's beautiful. We get great weather and we have lots of places to go. Hey, so tonight I want to talk about privacy. And privacy is an interesting topic. And people will say that we don't have privacy. But I had this conversation with some friends of mine, both of them in the industry, in the technology industry. And they kind of said, I said, privacy is to me is a big deal. And their aspect was, well, why?
Why is it
Because
a big deal?
yeah, I mean, so we're going to raise a whole generation. This is part of it. They're a little bit younger than you and I, so that's part of
Right.
it. But uh, it's like, well, they know everything about us. They're collecting stuff on us all the time, anyways. Whether it's our browsing history, our emails, our drive, our clouds, our use of AI. And I said, there's a couple of things. One of which is the social profiling and hacking for or the potential for increased spam and phishing and fake emails that are way more convincing
Right.
is one part of it. And they're like, well, yeah, but they get a lot of benefit from all the things they identify about them, things like, good advertising or targeted advertising. Some think it's good, some think it's bad. The values and the value statement that they give, like Google does. It's like, hey, we're going to track everything about you, but we're going to let you use Google Docs and Google Sheets and Gemini and all this other things for free because, we're making, money off of you as a commodity. And then I also brought up the other thing is I said, well, here's the other part is that I feel like the knowledge of these, we're at the mercy of the goodness of these companies to do right by us.
I don't
And
trust that.
well, I mean, yeah, you can because legislation's never going to be there, right? Never
No.
legislation always lags behind. I mean, I know Europe is doing a bunch of things. The UK most recently banned social media for anybody under 16. Great step. I'd love to see how it's enforced, but things like that. But then I brought up Meta, for example. And whether you
Right.
have a Facebook account or an Instagram account or not, I did not know this until recently, but 70% of the websites have this meta pixel, which then tracks information and social and profiles you about your, just all the things that you're doing. And so my issue is long term. If you are someone who's concerned about division or that anger cells, by increasing those echo chambers, increases that divisiveness.
Well, I think, yeah, along those lines, when information or let's say we're trying to now target a person, well, the very fact that advertising is targeting a person means that some manipulation's going on.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's advertising right there. So if we understand that we're being manipulated, the how targeted it could be, how accurate it could be, how effective it can be downright scary. I mean, if you go and look at what happened with both Brexit and Trump's win in 2016, those were classic psyops as far as how they use social media and other things to get people who are on the fence to move 1 degree off the fence. Not completely, but just 1 degree. And it changed everything.
Yeah, what was that
It
thing that
was
happened where they
Cambridge
sold?
Analytica.
Yeah, Cambridge Analytica. That's right.
Yes.
It's
And if
it's
you want a
scary.
really classic use case of how this can be used legally and not to our benefit, that is it.
Yeah. It's worrisome for me, but I think for I guess the young people, the younger people, they're living in a world without digital privacy.
No, they've never had it.
They've never had it and they probably never will, and they're not necessarily aware of it. So, they both agreed with my point about yes, of course, there's potential for more scams. There's potential for algorithm infighting and anger because anger sells.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
but they're also just wondering, like, well, it's out there. We're not gonna be able to do anything about it. So just accept it and get the most value of it. So I added two more points to that conversation. I said, one, if companies are going to treat us as a commodity, then we should get paid. And there's been legislation that's been proposed for that. I don't know if
Correct.
that's ever going to happen, but if you're a left-leaning liberal, that might be one way to get a guaranteed income from people, for people, is having the companies pay for it. The second point I made, which they really didn't have an answer for, I said, well, that's great. You accept the fact that everything is being tracked. Would you want somebody to open your U.S. postal mail?
Right. Before you ever read it.
Right. And so I made them pause and think about that. But, that's kind of the same idea, is that we have legislation for people illegally opening your mail, but we don't have legislation about or any kind of privacy rights for the use of using somebody's email or for using a company email. Not a
Right.
company email, but you know what I'm saying,
And,
some
and, and
some
this goes
email
all the way
provider.
back to the very beginning of the internet. And the internet was not made to be private. It was made to be the opposite. It was made to be open and easy to get to, so we have back channels to prevent nuclear war. That was the very
Yes.
first intent of it.
It's yeah, but it as with anything, it changes. It
Right.
evolves.
But from the legal argument saying that there was no expectation of privacy, therefore there is no privacy, uh, on the internet. Whereas with the post office service, the U.S. Postal Service, there was an expectation of privacy and it can be enforced. That's just the whole legal founding of the two different systems or argument, right?
Did you know like, it was talk about legislation. Did you know in one of the TikTok hearings, one of the senators, one of our octogenarians asked the TikTok CEO, is TikTok Wi-Fi?
Wow. Why?
So this is what I talk about legislation. The government has no idea how to manage technology because
So
they
the
don't even
person
understand it.
thinking of writing the legislation asked that question?
Yeah, well, the one who was holding the hearing, yes.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, we teach seniors, we support seniors. We have a lot of questions about, or we get a lot of questions about what is what. Um, I just don't, they don't have staffs that should be doing research for them. There's no surprise why our legislation lags behind technology.
But it
But
should too,
it,
right? I mean,
well, it should.
yeah,
I
because
mean,
I was having this discussion a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine where technology changes very, very fast, right?
and we
And
experiment,
let's
and there's a lot of experiments that happen.
yeah, and
We
some
don't know where it's
fail,
going to go.
some most fail,
Yep.
some win, right? Now let's go back the next step. You know, culture changes kind of, the fashion, the culture, all that kind of stuff. That changes not so fast. I mean, it not as fast as technology, but it does adapt rather quickly based on fashion or how groups move. Then let's take the next step, politics. Politics is kind of this mix because especially in a democratic system, right? It has to refer to the culture and what people are concerned about. But then the thing that moves the slowest is law. And we don't want it to move fast. We need that entire spectrum of things and how slow they move or how fast they move to have a healthy society. If everything moved as fast as technology, we'd be dead.
True, but but what's that time? What's that on ramp? So again, I mentioned the UK already starting. Hey, there's proof that use of screens and social media increases anxiety and increases
Beyond
suicide
correct.
rates amongst teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Body shaming, whatever, anorexia, all these other things.
Bullying, everything.
Right. So social media has been around since I don't know when Facebook started, but it's been around at least 10 years now. All right, maybe
Oh,
15
yeah,
years.
20 plus, yeah.
So is should legislation catch up in 20 years? I
Some of
mean,
it
what's
has, but some of it hasn't.
but
It's not a
it's
monolith.
no, it's not. But I mean, so what you said, it shouldn't hang up. It shouldn't keep up with business, shouldn't keep up with technology. But at some point, it should intervene, giving
Correct.
enough data and proof.
Right, because I
So,
would love for it to give us, but we don't do this as a culture or a society right now as far as giving parents more and more tools to govern our kids. They're actually working against us in that regard. So it'd
well,
be really
that's
nice to
why.
see, that if they would do that.
Well, that's why I'm interested to see how the UK will enforce there's nobody under 16 has social media because I know my kids, right? And it's like they weren't supposed to have a Facebook account or whatever until they were
No,
13. Yeah, well, I just put in a fake birth date, and what are you gonna do?
correct. And it's
Right?
not like you can ban their phones because they'll just use their friends.
Correct. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. I just think that's at least they're trying, and I give them credits for that. So let's change gears a little bit about those, but stay with privacy here.
Okay,
There were a couple of privacy T's and C changes, one of which you looked at, which was the Google T's and C's. So you want to talk about that
correct.
a little bit?
Well, you and I had talked, offline and stuff, and we were concerned about what was going on with the different changes in terms and conditions and how that's going to really affect us. And so I wanted to just see, get a quick overview of, hey, how's this going? And how are these going to really compare? So I asked Claude, right? So I said, Claude, we've had changes in terms and conditions across YouTube, Google, basically all of Google's properties, Meta, which is Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Grok, all these different AI platforms, even Microsoft, right? All of them have changed their terms and conditions like over the past 3 months. What the heck's going on? And the big thing is that they want to be able to use our information now, not just to target advertising, but also to train their AI models. And they're changing the T's and C's to do that.
The big change, and this is where people don't really talk about the impact of AI. But the bottom line is that we can use all the information to feed their AI.
Correct.
And so that is concerning to me because it just means that you have to dig 5 levels deep to be able to opt out of
Right.
feeding
And it's
AI.
not in a standardized format or a place or anything. Like you go between services, who knows where it is.
Yeah. And so, for let's just take the Google example, right? So the
Okay.
Google example is great. You can opt out, but then you lose all the AI features and functions.
Correct.
So it won't summarize your emails or it won't kind of autofill what you they think you're going to talk about. It really turns off all that. It even turns off your categories in terms of which emails come to your inbox versus promotions and things like that. And so, it's basically an all or nothing. They want to drive your activity into their AI to provide increased profiling uh, about us, right? For us, to us, about us. And so, I think that's okay. I mean, I, to me, Google is the least of my worries in a lot of ways because I feel like they're not personalizing us, that they're putting us in cohorts and then kind of selling that advertising cohort to people who want to advertise to us. I also feel like they give us a lot of value for free, and it's always been one of those things about risk versus value. But
Hmm.
there are some concerns that I have with it. There are things like biased searches and biased results that come back to us based on our history and our profiling. This is really troubling to me when it comes to like Meta, that they're using, whether it's the Meta pixels or your Facebook account or your Instagram account, to really drive
We
your or to track your behavior, to drive the stories you see in your feeds.
Yeah, we should talk about those metapixels
So
because that
metapixels. Yeah, let's
yeah,
talk about metapixels are kind of like cookies in some ways. They call it something else. But I did not know this, like I said, that 70% of the websites we visit have a metapixel,
that's correct.
which sends back information to Meta, whether you have a
And
Facebook account or not.
it shares that information with the website provider. So the website
Yes.
provider gets information about who's visiting, under what conditions, all that type of stuff. But everything gets fed back to Facebook.
Yes. And not just Facebook,
Yes, all
but
of
the
Meta's
data
stuff.
brokers as well.
Yes.
Right. And we're doing a class on the California privacy platform. And what they're trying to talk about is, how to delete your data from those data brokers. But I just kind of want to just mention this because this is where I think this is really dangerous. We're already in our echo chambers, and I had this conversation again with some of these folks that we are having just head over for an event. I was talking about, how anger is equals dollars, all right?
Yep.
And if I was concerned, and if I am concerned about, how we treat each other as a country or as just people, I mean, you and I think talked about this, is that when you talk to your friends, like I said, when you go to church and you have maybe a men's group or whatever, but they kind of have a similar perspective because they all go to the same church. In some ways, that's one kind of echo chamber, right? Because you're always talking, you kind of come somewhat from the same perspective, or at least you have some commonality about that.
Right.
When we go into, let's just say I was a conspiracy theory and I had a bunch of friends who were conspiracy theorists, and I would sit there and talk about it. But then also when I go search on the internet or I go on my Facebook page and it gets and my feed just keeps giving me more and
Reinforcing it.
more information about conspiracy theories or making me angry, right? Because again, when it makes me angry, I click more. I think
Hmm.
that's really dangerous. And
I agree.
70% of, under 30s get some type of news from their social media. And so if you're only being fed one side, I think we're in trouble, right? And this goes back to the whole thing about, the value of, or the morals and values of the companies that hold our data. If you're only concerned about money, which I mean, I get it. That's why we're in a capitalistic society, right?
Right.
You make money, your stock value goes up, everything else. I just feel like there are ways to do it and do it right. So back to the whole meta thing. So what I understand and what I couldn't find, at least this was true a week or two ago, and things might have changed. You can't opt out.
No.
And
Not
so if you can't,
easily.
well, no, you can't opt out at all.
You mean
And
like a pixel
so
or something? Or yeah.
yeah, but so in the US, so actually this is what it says. US users don't have the option to opt out. You do in the EU, UK, Switzerland, Brazil. So and this goes back to legislation. In the US, Meta isn't legally required to honor opt-out requests.
Mhm.
You can submit one, but they don't have
Correct.
to honor it. And so, in simplest forms, there's no real way to opt out. You either don't have a Facebook account But even if you don't have a Facebook account or an Instagram account, they'll still track some of the information about you, about the sites you visit, because they're embedded into a
All
bunch of different
over.
websites. Yeah.
Correct.
So I think that's crazy. And so, this is where, we talked again about legislation earlier. I think Europe and their GDPR is ahead of us, and at least they're trying to do some things to kind of put some bumpers around it, right? To put some
Right.
guidance around it. And so, this concerns me. I hope it changes. I'm not telling people to not use Meta or anything else. I'm just saying be aware of all that stuff. But there
Right.
is
And
no
I don't think
there
we
is
need to
no opt out.
yeah, I don't think we need to completely ban it. And for Meta, that's a very different relationship. I mean, it's a social media site. I mean, for us to get benefits from it, we have to reveal things about ourselves. We have to reveal about our relationships, those types of things. Um, I think that's been there from the beginning, and people have kind of gotten used to it, right? And as far as they're saying, oh, okay, I'm willing to take this, not invasion, but giving up my privacy in this regard in order to get these benefits. However, I think that has been pressed to the nth degree on Meta's side as far as how they've leveraged that information. And that's where I find it very disconcerting.
Yep. Yep. So, we're going to kind of do an in-depth conversation about privacy here in one of our classes coming up in, I think, July. We need some time to kind of fully analyze some of the changes that have happened. But,
No kidding.
it is a concern. I mean, at least it's a concern to me. Like I said, to some people, they don't care.
Right.
Um, I just have long-term concerns. Okay, so that wraps up that part of our conversation. It's just privacy. We don't have any. We don't have
But,
any digital
you know,
privacy, but there are things we can do to protect ourselves.
yes.
And so, but before we do that, let's just make sure we thank our grantors and individual donors.
Yes,
We
please.
are able to do our classes, our podcasts, our tech tips, our newsletters, our website, which is just full of information at anvcs.org. It's made possible by our sponsors and grantors, Peninsula Healthcare District, Dignity Health, Sequoia Healthcare District, El Camino Healthcare District, and just a new supporter of ours is El Camino Health, which are actually two different entities. So we're
Hmm.
very appreciative of that. The charitable fund at the Forum, Los Altos Mountain View Community Fund. We are doing some work with NCOA and IBM, and then also we have some grantors from Silicon Valley Community Fund. And then if you want to mention our partners, that would be great.
Sure. Now, we also have partners though, not just give us their facilities to or invite us to their facilities to hold our different tech talks and those types of things, but some of them also pay us to do this as far as, further underwriting all the costs and all those types of things. One of our big partners here is Eschaton in Carmichael. We also have the city of Milpitas, the Veterans Memorial Senior Center there in Redwood City, Peninsula Family Services, the Truesdale, I believe that's in Burlingame, which is also another Eschaton facility, the
Yep.
V at Palo Alto, the city of Burlingame, Avenidas Village. We've almost from the very beginning we've been working with Avenidas Village, and City of Los Altos and the India Community Center.
Yes. So this is one of the reasons why we keep our overhead low. It's because we go to where everybody is at and they're trusted sites already, and then we thank the generosity of those centers to be able to give us some space.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk. So we talked about privacy. And so not everybody understands privacy, but there are certain things that we can do to help. Part of it is safety and security. And so there's actually just, what's the minimum? I guess let me ask you this question. What's the minimum that someone can do to safeguard themselves and protect their privacy?
Okay, so we talk about our building blocks, our digital armor. I mean, the very first thing we have to do is have good password procedures. We have to have, you know, pretty sanitary passwords as far as we don't reuse passwords. Our passphrase or the thing that we can reuse, is long enough. But they are customized by every site. All those types of things add up. And then if we start getting really good at that, then we can start using password managers, and then we can start looking at using pass keys and things like that. So that's really important. But then the next thing right after passwords is for me, antivirus, and all the things that are current antivirus, anti-bad stuff, right? I mean, because they end up scanning our emails and all those types of things for bad attachments and everything, so they keep us really, really protected there. The next thing I go to then are all the things I do to alert myself about bad messages through email and messages, right? Um, so all of those types of things. Then I like using a website, or I'm sorry, a browser that helps me avoid all the detection. I have to do a lot of research to protect our elders, right? I have to go to some pretty nefarious sites sometimes, not things I would typically go and visit. So I don't want that being tracked because it's
Yeah.
going to upset things. So what I do is I go to and I create, either an incognito window or something like that, right? Where all of a sudden none of my history is tracked, none of my what do you call the cookies are tracked. All that stuff is turned off for that session. So there's different things that we can do. Those are my basics.
You forgot one, which
Which one?
was that's super important, which is two-factor authentication.
Oh, in the passwords, yes.
Yeah, so when you mention passwords, we want to make sure that you have a secondary identification to get a one-time passcode. Most of us get it from through text or email, which isn't always the best, but it's effective. 99 Microsoft says 99.9% of identity theft is presented or prevented by using two-factor authentication. But let's just
Correct.
kind of summarize what you said, unique passwords, two-factor authentication, um, making sure that that we actually are the last line of defense on a lot of that stuff. But um, having those couple of things are super important. Another thing that I would add to what your list would be to freeze all your credit.
Oh, I keep mine frozen, until I need to unfreeze it.
Yeah. And so if you're going to freeze your credit, it's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. You have to go to all three of them to make sure that you freeze your credit. Freezing your credit does not do anything other than not allow somebody to open up new credit.
Right.
And if you need new credit, you just got to go onto the website, use your username and password, and then look to unfreeze it. And it is by law, I believe, free just to be able to freeze your credit with
That
this
is by
credit
law.
agency.
That's
And
correct.
so, yeah, they want you to be a member, they want you to pay other things, but if you're just there to use your credit, it is free and available to you by just creating an account. So let's talk a little bit about all those things. So you said incognito mode. So incognito mode does not track or keep your cookies and history. It leaves it
Correct.
they expire after you close the session. However, it does not fully protect your privacy because your ISP and the website that you're going to understands who you are and
Correct.
where you're coming from.
And there's a lot of metadata and all that type of stuff in there. Now,
It's
I
what they
do
call
another
it's what they call
thing.
fingerprint, right?
Right.
They're
I
fingerprinting you.
I do another thing too, though. I don't typically use my ISP's DNS servers, which is another thing that, tracks. But that's, now we're getting into the weeds, right? I mean,
Well, we'll talk
I
about
don't
the
think most,
second. We'll
yeah,
talk about the secondary thing. Well, there's a couple other things that people can do if they really want to. They could use incognito mode with a VPN, virtual private network, which is
correct.
$40 a year, something like that, which creates a super secret tunnel. In fact, that's how Ed Snowden, figured out how to
Yes.
to tell everybody the secrets without them finding out where he was at. It's a software. You can get a software VPN, which kind of blinds the fingerprinting, which means that they don't know where you're coming from or who you are, and it kind of blocks things out from any of the bad guys and the tracking. But I think there's a couple of simpler things. Besides just using a private window or incognito. Safari, if you're a Mac user or an Apple user, Safari does a decent job of blocking trackers. It's not foolproof. What Safari tries to do is confuse whoever is tracking you into thinking you're somewhere else or somebody
Right.
else. So they do a pretty good job at it. One of the ones that I'm a big fan of and starting to use more and more is Brave, the Brave
Yes, I like
browser.
Brave a lot.
And they can show you right outside how many trackers they've stopped and all this other kind of good stuff every time you open it. Um, but there's one thing that we're kind of missing with all of this is that just because you use a browser, depending on who your search engine is, having a search engine, say it's Yahoo or Google or something like that, even though you're in incognito mode, but you're using their search engine, they're still tracking you.
They're still tracking everything.
And so
Exactly. You do
let's
a search,
explain,
they're tracking it.
yeah, so let's explain that a little bit because I don't think everybody understands that the
Right.
search engine and the browser are two different things. Inside
Right.
a browser is just a program that allows you to get to the internet. That could be Firefox, that could be Chrome, that could be Edge, it could be Safari, it could be Opera, it could be Brave.
Right. A browser understands the language of websites,
Yes,
takes that language and presents it to us visually, audio, words, everything.
yes. And then inside of each browser is a search engine, and the search engine indexes the entirety of the internet, at least as
Correct.
much as it can, the surface internet, and puts addresses to it so that when you search, it can find it. It's like I like to compare it to the Dewey Decimal System in the library. It's like you want to find a book, you go to the card catalog or the computer now. People don't know what a card catalog is anymore.
Or even the Dewey Decimal.
And it gives you a code. It might say like the author's name, an aisle, a place where the book is, blah blah blah. That's essentially what a search engine does at scale for literally billions of websites. And so
Correct.
that turns it. But the search engines, there's not that many of them. There's really not. I mean, there's probably less than I don't know how many. I mean, maybe a dozen that we know of. Um, but they all do it. But the most popular one, of course, is Google, which has like 90% share. It comes installed. If you get a new Mac and you open up Safari, it's got Google installed.
Right.
Um, but the ones like Google and Yahoo, they tell you they're going to track you, right? Bing,
Right.
right? This is another search engine. They're just going to track you to help improve Microsoft services, whatever that means. But there are also a few that protect your privacy. Brave has their own kind of search engine inside it. DuckDuckGo is very popular. Everybody, has
I
heard of
like
DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo a lot.
It's pretty I find DuckDuckGo effective, but kind of bland.
Well, I
It's
think it's
just,
effective
just
if
the,
I'm just
it's just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, right? I
right.
mean,
If
that's
I'm looking at very high level stuff, like the 30,000 foot view, it's great. When I start digging into details, it's terrible.
yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, it's like I said, it's okay, but it does protect your privacy,
Hmm.
and it does prevent a lot of tracking. But so if you're going to use a Safari, you should probably use a DuckDuckGo if you're concerned about privacy. If you're going to use another browser that you don't really know much about, but Brave is really good. Those are the two that I think, so I actually asked Claude this. I said, what's the difference in privacy between Safari and Brave? They said Safari is like a shield and Brave is like a tank in terms of protecting your privacy.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
s- and so, there are things that are designed, and just like email, if you want to be private on your email, there is no privacy on your email, whether it's from AT&T and T and Yahoo or any of the Yahoo services or Gmail. You could pay for it like Proton Mail, or you could use a free email. I mean, Proton also has a free email as well. Again, we're not paid by any of these guys, so it's not
No,
like
we're
we're
not
promoting
endorsing
it of
them at
them,
all. Right.
right? But I have a Proton account and I use that for certain things. But um, so so we kind of rambled on a little bit, but let's kind of just talk about again the minimum stuff that you can do for your security and privacy. We talked about passwords. We talked about two-factor authentication.
Right.
What else did you have on your list?
Antivirus,
Antivirus.
anti-malware, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep. Okay. We talked about maybe a different browser or search engine for your
That's
browser,
that's
we
correct.
like Safari and Brave. We talked about freezing your credit, going to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion and freezing your credit because we don't need our somebody has our social security number and home address and driver's license. Speaking of privacy, right? To go out and try to open new credit for under our name and put us on the hook for paying it.
Right.
Um, so those are at least the minimum things that we can do, I believe. And then, of course, protecting ourselves with making sure we don't click on spam emails or don't call the numbers on a pop-up window or click bad links or let anybody into our computer, things like that. So those are the minimum things I think we could do, and it takes practice to do all this stuff. Now, there are more extreme things you can do to protect your privacy, all right? And so I'll tell you a couple things. So I've had a couple of, doing the stuff that we do, helping seniors, doing in-home support, doing a whole bunch of different things. I've personally had a run-in with a hacker because I found out where they lived and where they were at, and
Whoa.
I was the last one that was on an email thread or a text thread with one of the people they hacked. So they contacted me, and we went back and forth. But there are certain things that I do, right? We can talk about a couple of different things. So passwords, of course, right? Passwords, of
Right.
course, are first and foremost having unique passwords that are complex that don't really follow sequence for especially for most important ones. Um, using use of an authenticator app
Yes.
for my one-time passcodes. You want to explain what authenticator app is? Where
Well, yeah. So basically, it's you typically a six-digit code that gets randomly reset every 30 seconds or a minute, depending on which authenticator app you're using.
so let's
And
let's convert let's contrast that to a text one-time passcode. A
correct.
text one-time passcode is good for 15 to 30 minutes.
Right.
Or 30, yeah, 15 to 30 minutes.
Right. And it's
And,
something that you're going to get either through messaging or through email. You're going to get this one-time passcode sent back to you.
and
But
there's
with an
some risk to it.
authenticator app,
There is some risk to getting it on email and phone if you're being monitored or if
absolutely.
your
Yeah,
email's been hacked.
right. Especially if you've been hacked, right? It's definitely risky. But if you have an authenticator app that's sitting in, let's say, you can have a standalone or it can be inside one of your password managers. Typically, a password manager has it built in. Then what happens then when you first set up that authenticator with the website, you guys both have what's called the seed, the very first thing that created the way it creates the dual credentials, if you will. So now we're always in sync. Every time my 30-second timer goes off, so does theirs, and we regenerate the same identical code on both sides. Okay, because we synced it from the very beginning. So that way we verify ourselves to each other with this authenticator app. I really like them. They're kind of weird to first set up. I mean, they're kind of geeky, but it's getting better. And whether that takes off more or pass keys, which kind of is a authenticator app kind of thing built into just using your thumbprint or Face ID. Um, who knows? We'll find out. But right now they're both kind of geeky
Yeah, so two-factor authentication is what I would do. I would also
as a
put
minimum.
as a minimum, but as an advance, I might use authenticator app, or I do use an authenticator app. Okay.
Right. Especially like
Um,
all my financial stuff, I use authenticator apps.
yeah, yes. The pro make sure the secret is not having too many on the authenticator app because their 30 seconds will run out by the time you find it.
Well, that's why
So they
why I
get away.
really like putting them inside my password manager.
Yeah.
because it, like, for example, whenever I log into PayPal, right, I literally just say autofill, right? It
Yeah.
puts in my username, my password. When the screen comes up for the authenticator, it automatically puts it in. Poof, I'm in.
Yeah, I do it for a lot of things, but I don't do it for my most important ones.
Yeah, I
Right? I don't
understand.
save anything under my I don't save anything digitally for my investment accounts, my bank accounts, my cash accounts, things like that. But so anyways, so at a minimum, two-factor authentication. Advanced would be use of an authenticator app. Okay.
Hmm.
I go to a few more extremes. I have, for example, a second phone number on my phone
Yeah,
that is only used for one-time passcodes.
correct.
So, whether it makes me more safe or not, I believe it does because nobody has that phone number.
Yeah, you're not giving it out to anybody.
And so it's not used for phone calls. It's not used for anything else. It's only used for one-time passcodes. I go again to a little more extreme about having a Proton account, which only has, things that I would get from my most important information,
Right.
whether it's bank notices or credit card notices
Now,
or
Proton is a
or
secure email account, correct?
yes, Proton is a
Yeah.
secure email account. And so I would kind of separate those like from my general stuff, especially since we run, a business on some of the other email accounts that we might mistakenly send out. Um, so I go to a few more extremes. I might also use Brave, or I do use Brave as a
Hmm.
browser for a lot of the non-business stuff that we do.
Can I
I
mention why
also,
I think Brave is a really good browser for both privacy and performance?
hmm,
Because
good,
Brave is built on the Chromium platform. And this is what Google has put out there when they wanted it to be an open source thing. And so Chrome is built on the Chromium open source platform. So if anything is built on Chromium, it's going to typically be very, very compatible across all of the web because the web really has used the Chromium, set or library, if you will, as its standard to build by. So if it's built on Chromium, it's going to be very, very compatible across the entire web. When I'm using Safari, I'll find entire websites that just don't work because the Chrome is not 100% compatible with Chromium. So I love how Brave is 100% compatible, and yet it's so stripped down. It's very, very fast and high performance, and it doesn't track anything. So I really like the solution. Oops, you're muted. Be careful,
yep.
Eric.
So it is a good browser, and people might say, how do I get it? Well, you can get it from the Windows Store, you can get it from the App Store.
Right.
Or you can go to Brave and look for the Brave browser. We get a lot of the people get a lot of the Norton privacy browsers or the McAfee privacy browsers and all this stuff. I find them really slow. Right?
Very.
I
But
find them,
that's the thing I why I really avoid, Norton McAfee in the first place is they just slow things down. They're so heavy.
yeah. And so, but anyways, so I'll use the Brave browser. So again, passwords, two-factor authentication, authenticator app, secondary phone number for one-time passcodes. Proton Mail, which is secure Proton, which I don't pay for. I just use the free version. It keeps me disciplined because I have to keep it clean, right? But it's
Right.
also not getting all the other junk mail that I would get from all these other accounts that I use for other things. Um, use the Brave browser with the Brave search engine, and so to that degree, I kind of go a couple steps further just to kind of protect my privacy. And, privacy leads to, fraud prevention, in my opinion,
Correct.
and security prevention or strengthens our security and things like that. And so, and then you like to use passkeys and your password manager to manage a lot of that to make it easier to deal with.
Very much so. I have, basically most of everything that's private for me is in my password manager, which is 1Password. And 1Password follows me over all three operating systems that I use, which are Windows, Mac, and Linux.
And do you use a VPN very often?
Whenever I'm on a public Wi-Fi, I use a VPN.
Okay.
I don't use it at
Um,
home. I really don't use it
Yeah, I
that
don't
much.
use it at home. So that's one other thing we should mention, taken to the next level of security. Do you use a mesh system, or who's your router? Do you use the ISP leased router? What do you do over there?
No, my I use Ubiquiti as my infrastructure, and I really like the products. I'm familiar with them, and now they're very, very high performing too, as far as speed and throughput and capacity, all that kind of fun
Do
stuff.
you enable their traffic detection or their security, their built-in
Yes, I
security?
do. In
Do you
fact,
pay for it?
I buy some of their one of their annual subscriptions that increases my security.
Yeah. So I use TP-Link and I use their mesh system and I buy their additional security. So that's another one in your home. So not only is all
Correct.
we're talking about the next level of privacy and security um,
Well,
is monitor paying for your network security suite to help block some of the bad traffic that can come into your home.
right, because I actually need pinholes, little things that are to get into my or through my firewall. I want that very well managed,
Yeah.
and they manage the heck out of it so that even if somebody is trying to hack me, those ports appear closed. But because
Yeah.
I know they're open and how to get to them, and using their software, it gets me in. So I really like that.
Speaking of another browser, have you used the Tor browser?
I did a long time ago. I haven't used it in probably about 5 years, to be honest with you. The browser I'm enjoying using right now just because it puts all my navigating links and stuff, not the tabs at the top, everything's on the left side, right? Um, it has a different kind of framework about themes and stuff like that as far as how I can group those things rather than just a plain bookmark. I really like it. It's called Zen, Zen, and it's based on Chromium, and it's very high performing and relatively good in privacy, and I can lock it down if I need to. So I've been playing with that, and I've really enjoyed it because it just gives me as much screen as possible.
You know, there's probably, well, I know there's dozens of browsers that are
Yeah,
available
there's a
to
lot
us.
now.
Um, the Tor browser is another one that you can use, but it's basically runs through the onion router. What they call Tor is the onion router, right?
Right, so
And
that's where you got to really explain too. Come on, what the onion router is, because it's
so the onion router
you're getting
is
into some of the dark web, you know.
So, so what I was saying, Ed Snowden before, right? Ed Snowden used the Tor browser plus a VPN to stay
Right.
anonymous so people couldn't find him. So, what the onion router Tor means is that it goes through several hops before. So let's say I'm going to Macy's.com
Right.
from my home. It goes from my computer out to my AT&T because that's my ISP, then goes to Macy's
Mhm.
essentially, right? That's kind of what happens. So it goes to their ISP and it goes to Macy's or their data center, right? But with the Tor, it's, if you look at an onion and you peel back the layers, basically what happens is it will go from me to some anonymous place, to some another anonymous place, to another anonymous place, and jump around until it finally gets to Macy's.com,
And
which
everybody
then
who is running Tor, it can be one of
yes.
those places.
Correct. And so that's, it's funny because when you open up the Tor browser, it says run by volunteers,
Right.
right? And so it's run by hundreds of places that people respect their privacy or want their
Very
privacy.
much so.
And so it is a way to stay really anonymous on the web. But again, this is next level stuff. Um, there is some performance impact using something like Tor, but there are ways to stay really anonymous on the internet if you really wanted to and protect your
Right.
privacy.
And one of the things I do that does reduce the amount of tracking, I alluded to this earlier, is I set my own DNS servers. I do not let my ISP be my DNS server because they can then track the things I'm going through, what I'm searching for, what I'm routing through. I don't want them to do that. I use Cloudflare's DNS servers because they're one of the big security companies behind the internet. They're the ones that prevent the the DDoS attacks and all that type of stuff, right? The denial of service attacks, all that kind of stuff. So I like them because they're super high performance. They're one of the very key DNS servers. So in other words, once a website updates its ISP or its IP address in Cloudflare, the world knows. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
trying to, distribute through every other router after that. So it's a very, very high performance type of arrangement. I mean, the way my searches, the way my when I directly type in a web address or whatever, it goes fast through that. Their DNS is really fast and nothing gets tracked. So I like
And
that.
essentially, you're just configuring that through your router.
Yeah, I set it in my router, right? In my
Yeah.
router, I say here at my preferred DNS servers. 1.1.1.1.
Yes. Now we're going to geek out with all the other people. So,
That's
anyways,
right.
these are some of the more extreme things that we could be doing to protect pride. But I think the bottom line of our whole conversation tonight is that, it's our belief, it's my belief, I think it's your belief that we should have some semblance of privacy, of digital privacy.
Yes.
And a lot of it is for a variety of reasons. And I think for the most part, it's to me, it's security, my digital security. To me, it's kind of the whole sociological thing about divisiveness and what people are seeing and some other things, right? That
Right.
like I
And
said,
I wish
algorithms.
our culture would get back to just doing things like, every time I worked or debated with, let's say, upper level people, people in the last years of their bachelor's or in graduate programs, they did a lot of oppositional analysis, you know. Well, they would go and look at what the other side is saying. I mean, not just to pick it apart, but to understand it, right? And understand, which would then reveal the weaknesses in their own argument.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we don't do that as,
Yeah, but you also got to
we,
remember
we've kind of lost that.
We were both worked at Intel for a long time, and
Well,
constructive
yeah,
confrontation was one of their
was
key
in the
values.
culture.
Yeah, and so that was kind of the expectation. And I had a boss who said to not arguments, but different points of view makes us better. So we should be have constructive
Remember
confrontation.
how
We should
brutal the
be able
quarterly
to.
reviews were when you would, oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
was just tear us
But it was
apart.
part
But
of it. But it was part of our expectation is to
correct.
look at the other side, find the flaws, see the weakness in our arguments. And we don't do that because people's feelings get hurt. And so and I get it. But also I think there's we can go on and on about all the kind of different things about that. I don't think that's, you know, perfect for this topic, but you know, I don't think we should be driven by our technology to be more divisive or to be angry. The
Correct.
internet's a great thing. Our
And it's
technology
not
is
just
a great
anger,
thing.
Eric. It's any heightened level of feeling.
Yeah,
Anger,
well,
anxiety, on edge, on alert, all of those heightened things make us much easier to manipulate.
except for those but things that really matter like empathy and kindness takes a second fiddle to those things.
Absolutely. And
And
well,
so,
I don't think okay, I see what you're saying. You don't want them attacked, right?
yeah, what I'm just saying is from a monetary and monetization algorithm perspective, kindness and empathy takes a back seat to anger or anxiety and frustration.
Yeah, it's
And
harder to manipulate.
yeah. So, but with that being said, have you watched the World Cup?
Oh, yes. That's been so fun watching
And
foreigners respond to our culture.
well, it's not just that. It's that beyond all that social media stuff, beyond all the anxiety, beyond all the algorithm stuff, what it's doing is pulling people together and enjoying something together.
Yes. Yes.
Have you been like a good old watch party? I went to a watch party in Road City and other things. People are having fun. People are talking to each other. People are getting out. People are, actually seeing people face to face.
Yes.
And
And
so what
they're
this
on they're voting for
Yeah.
opposite teams and they're having fun doing it. I think it's great.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
what I mean. So it just goes to show that if we ever get behind out from behind our screens and actually talk to people, Um, there's a lot of enjoyment there. And I don't want to be an old fogey or
Absolutely.
anything, but I think what it is showing is that there's a lot more that that we have in common than we don't have in common.
Oh, that's
And
what I really want to get back to. We have
and
so much more in common than what we
yes,
don't have in common. Yep.
the great Maya Angelou, right?
Oh, heck yes. That was a
Anyways, all right.
wise woman.
Yeah, she was. All right. Anything else that we should be talking about in terms of privacy? I think we raised the concern. I think we gave the minimum standards of what we have, what we should be doing. We also kind of give some examples of other things that we could be doing to build up our digital armor. Anything else you want to chat about or that we missed?
No, I think that covered it.
All right, so let me play us out again. Thank our grantors and sponsors. Um, we're getting to the summer, which is going to be, warm, and living in California is probably, one of the best places to be weather-wise. Um, and so I personally am thankful for being able to enjoy the sun and go to places like Tiburon or like you were in Santa Cruz or anywhere
Yes.
else, and then enjoy the World Cup. Right. So
Absolutely. Hey, be careful. We're muted still, so on the music
yes.
part.
So we're gonna just play us out, see what we can do here, and hopefully you have a good night, Vedo.
You too. Cheers.